Hello world, my name is John and I'm trying to get my life story out there. So this is part 5 and all these recordings are unedited, unscripted, and they are not necessarily in chronological order, so I might be going back and forth in time, and hopefully in the end it's gonna make some kind of sense. So currently I'm located in Czechia, in the heart of Europe. I'm in my sister's studio apartment, and I got literally nothing else to do than just talk about myself. See, I'm not really obsessed about my own life story, but I figured, you know, I'm gonna put it out there. Why not? Everybody's doing it. So let me follow up on my previous recording when I was talking about all the complications that I had during renovating the house, my last project. And in this recording, I want to kind of sum it up and move on to another stories in my life. So while I was working on that house, I ran into a bunch of problems with people that I hired. You know, I even forget to mention at one of my previous videos that one of the guys actually was using drugs uh, on the work site. I wouldn't even know because nobody would tell me. I wouldn't know if I didn't have my GoPro cameras installed in the house. So while I was gone to I don't know, shopping for materials or whatever, this one guy, he just made a line on the window sill, and he just sniffed it, And I was wondering, some of the days when I was there, and I was trying to give him some work to do, and I was wondering, he was acting strange, and that was because of the drugs. And I hate drugs. Uh, this was actually first time in my life I actually saw someone in person doing it. I never seen any drug in my life. I never touched. I never used it, and I hate drugs. And I don't understand any of the fuss in the movies and all that. I don't understand any of it. Uh, and it's like completely different world to me. So once I saw that, I fired the guy on the spot, and he never came back. So that's one of the things I forgot. So during renovating this house, I ran out of money twice, and I was forced to sell a bunch of my personal stuff. I even sold my Apple Watch that I bought before I started the project. I bought one of the most expensive pieces for $1,200. So I sold that one on Amazon for about 300 bucks. And this is also a story on its own. I actually was trying to sell it for quite some time, and this one woman bought it. And in the description, I clearly stated that the watch is scratched and is used because I was wearing it all the time while I was working on the house. So it had a bunch of scratches on the belt, especially. The body itself is very scratch resistant. Also, the glass is like what is it made of? This sapphire glass, and it doesn't scratch at all. So, but the belt was scratched, and the lady like returned it, and she started posting negative reviews on my Amazon account, and she was saying that I sold her a bad watch, and it doesn't work, and she couldn't turn it on, or whatever, but the watch just worked perfectly normal. And she posted a bunch of negative reviews on that, and I was dealing back and forth with Amazon to remove all those reviews and comments because they were all lie. And because I didn't even notice she did all these reviews, and I was trying to sell the watch again after she mailed it back to me, and I was trying to sell the watch again, and for a very long time I couldn't sell it, and I was wondering why, and then I realized all the no discovered all those negative reviews, and that fucking bitch just fucking killed it. So eventually Amazon removed all those reviews, but it wasn't easy to do. I had to like really work on it, and eventually they removed it, and I sold the watch again to a guy who just wanted to buy it because of that belt, because the belt itself was very expensive if you wanted to buy it online, and all it needed was just to polish it, and it would just remove all those scratches if you use like a polishing compound. You could polish it nice, and I mean that belt, it was so high quality built that it's really worth the money, and he just paid $300 just for the belt. So that's another story. I had, during renovating the house, I mentioned I had some health issues, and I was very exhausted, and at times I couldn't do anything, and I only worked a few hours a day, and my progress was very very slow, and I had days when I was getting so dizzy, and I almost fainted on a number of occasions. I saw stars, I was getting deaf. I had all kinds of stuff going on. I had a tinnitus in my ears. I mean, my I had this white noise in my head all the time, and I was feeling so weak. So a number of occasions I had to, just drop all the tools, and I literally had to just lie down and get some rest. So the process was very slow, but I was telling myself I have to finish the house. I mean, there is no other way for me than to finish it. If I don't finish it, I'm screwed, I'm fucked up for the rest of my life, because I have all my money invested in the house, all my cash money invested in the house. So I was slowly moving forward, and then everything was almost finished, and I hired my neighbor actually suggested me a guy that worked for my neighbor, and he just didn't have any work for him, so he suggested him to me. So I hired this guy for, I don't know, a couple weeks, just a few days. He was helping me with some finishing touches and painting outside. I actually had to repaint some of I had him to repaint some of the soffits on the exterior of the house, because I used a very expensive paint, and it had a primer in it, but all the knots on the boards, we installed a bunch of new boards on the fascia, and all the knots were bleeding through the paint. So I had him to repaint all that, use a primer and repaint it, so the knots wouldn't bleed through anymore. And then he was helping me, just hauling a debris to the landfill, to local landfill in Fayetteville, and he was helping me, load it, unload it. And one day, it was actually the last trip with my beat up truck, with this piece of junk truck. It was the last trip to the landfill, and this guy, Daniel, his name was Daniel, was actually driving with me, riding with me to landfill, and we had the bed of the truck loaded full of crap, and I'm always trying to like tie it down with the uh, uh, it was the straps, but something got loose, like a bucket or something, And this truck, I mean, it had like really fucked up suspension. And the Bragg Boulevard, I was driving on the Bragg Boulevard, and it was under construction at the time, and the manholes are like in the middle of the road. And because they've removed uh, a layer of a tarmac of that road, those manholes were kind of elevated above the pavement, right? So every time I went over the manhole, my truck was jumping like that. And and a bucket fell out of my out of the bed. And there was a cop right behind me. There was a cop, and he fucking pulled me over because of that bucket that I lost. It was an empty bucket, plastic uh, paint bucket. And he pulled me over. And he asked me for my driver's license and my insurance, and registration. Well, actually not insurance, because it's not a, you don't need to show that anymore because they changed it, and it's everything is in the computer so they can look it up. But I had to show him the registration. And I think I couldn't find it at the moment. And anyway, I have a driver's license from a New Mexico, right? Because I couldn't get a driver's license in North Carolina anymore, because I was staying illegally in United States, and I didn't have any social security number. So I couldn't get a driver's license in North Carolina anymore. I mean, you could get it before, but they changed the laws and all that. And there is only, I think there's only like 4 states in United States that I could still get a driver's license, American driver's license. So I actually traveled in um, in 2011. I think it was like in September 2011. I actually drove to New Mexico, to Albuquerque, and I stayed there for a couple of months to get a driver's license. I'm going to talk about it sometime later, so I don't waste too much time talking about it. So I got a driver's license in New Mexico that is valid for 8 years. And I think that that driver's license is no longer valid in New Mexico, because they randomly send you a letter to your home address, and you need to go to DMV and verify that you still live there. So I think that my driver's license has been already suspended long time ago in New Mexico, but it's still valid elsewhere, you know. And they don't, the cops and banks and whatever, they don't have a way to verify if the driver's license is still valid in the state that it was issued in. So this whole system is all fucked up, but it works for me. I don't give a damn. So I showed him my driver's license, and he checked my vehicle, and he took my driver's license and went back to his car. And he took forever. And I started getting really nervous. And he came back, and he said, you can't drive here with the out of state driver's license. How long have you lived here? And I'm like, it's been a couple of months. I mean, I live here and there. I mean, I have a dual residency. I mean, I travel back and forth, and he's like, I can't let you drive here with that driver's license anymore. You need to get a new one, so you cannot drive anymore. Uh, and I'm like, man, I only drive my truck back and forth to work. And I didn't even have at that time, I didn't even get a ticket like for 9 years. I mean, I swear I didn't get a speeding ticket or anything for like 9 years. This was my first ticket for that long, and he didn't let me get away with warning. You know, he gave me a ticket, and he put on the ticket that I cannot drive in North Carolina anymore. So, and I thought I'll be fine. So he went back to his car, and I put the gear in and started driving, and he started honking at me. I'm like, who is honking at me? Like, is it him? I thought it was somebody else on the road, and and I was like looking out of my window, and he was like, where you going, man? I told you you cannot drive anymore. It was a black guy, and and I had to get out my driver's seat and have Daniel, the American guy who was helping me. I had to have him drive to the landfill and back. So and I told him be careful because this truck has got so much play in the steering. I mean, like a half turn of the steering wheel. Like I was driving like this all the time with that truck. I mean, that truck. It was, man. I needed to get rid of it anyway. So I didn't even mind that I cannot drive that truck around town anymore. I didn't even mind. I mean, it was my last trip, and I was about to get rid of it. Okay. So after that, I realized I cannot drive that truck anymore around Fayetteville because it's so noticeable. I mean, anywhere I went with the truck, everybody was like looking at me, and everybody was like, "Hey, nice truck," you know. And sometimes even like chicks, you know, from other trucks, like were like hollering at me, "Hey, nice truck, man." And I'm like, I was like so ashamed of that truck, and everybody else loved it, man. I mean, it looked cool, but you know, what a piece of junk. Maybe one day I'm gonna buy one of those and pimp it up a little bit, but I couldn't drive it anymore around town. So I put it up for sale on a Craigslist, and I got another vehicle. I got a sedan, like really low key, unnoticeable. You know, like I needed to get a car that no cops will notice. So I got a Ford Taurus, 2011 Ford Taurus, and I paid just $6,500 for it because it had a salvage title. Otherwise, I would pay like 10 grand for it. But it was a good vehicle, reliable. It didn't have any like it had a little bit of water damage, but it didn't affect any mechanical or electrical or anything. It was driving fine, and everything was good. I didn't have any problems with that vehicle. So I bought another car so the cops wouldn't pull me over anymore. I mean, I couldn't risk it. Okay, I couldn't risk it to get deported or locked up or get another ticket. I didn't have money to afford another ticket, so I paid that ticket. It was like 250 bucks or whatever. So I didn't appeal against that. I just paid for it because I don't need any kind of complication. I don't need any attention. I just didn't feel like I want to risk my deportation. So this is how I took care of it. I got another vehicle, and then I needed to finish the house, right? So one of the other projects around house was I had to cut down a bunch of trees, really huge, mature oak trees. I cut down like 7 trees. Okay, I bought a chainsaw, and I laid down the trees. I mean, the house is sitting on very a big yard, a 2-acre yard, and there was lots of room for me to just lay the trees down. I mean, otherwise I would have to cut it from the top. I actually called a couple of guys to give me an estimate. How much would it cost me to cut all these trees down? And this one guy, he told me it would cost me $20,000, and I'm like, what the fuck? I mean, I'm not gonna pay $20,000 for having the trees cut down. I'm gonna do it myself. So it cost me only a few $100, uh, maybe just a couple $100 for just for the gas and the chain oil and the chainsaw that I actually bought to cut them trees down. I actually used it just for a couple of weeks, and then I returned it. That's how I usually do it when I need some kind of tools, expensive tools, and I only need it, and I know I only need it for a single project. I just buy it like at Lowe's or Home Depot, and you got like 15 days for a chainsaw to return it. So so I cut them trees down, and I cut it, I split it, I cut the branches off, and I cut everything. And after I was finished with with the cutting, I took the chainsaw back, and it actually didn't to cut all these trees down. It actually didn't cost me anything other than uh, back breaking work, man. I mean, it's a hard work. Everything is very heavy, and it took me pretty long time to do it and to clean it up and cut all the branches and haul it away. And I put a ad on Craigslist, free firewood, and people would come up and pick up all the stumps and branches and all that that I cut up. So people picked up most of it, and all the little branches I had a city pick it up. I put it on the roadside on the roadside, and and city can pick it up, and whatever has left we just hold it in the woods. So this was another big project, and after all these trees were cut down, I actually had to hire a people with backhoes and bobcats to level my yard. All right, I actually bought like 11 uh, loads of dump trucks of dirt, and I had the dirt spread around the house to make it look good. Uh, so I hired these guys, and I paid them, tons of money. It was like $5,000 for that, and I also had to finish the sidewalk at front of the house. So I was trying to do that. Actually, I have another story. I forgot about that. I actually wanted to do all that digging and work. I actually wanted to do that by myself. So I actually rented a little backhoe in local tool rentals, and I hauled it on a trailer from the rental to my house, and I had it for a weekend for like 3 days. Man, I totally destroyed my yard with it. I mean, I wasn't able to do anything with it. I mean, I dug some holes at front of the house to do the sidewalk, and I wanted to dig out some roots, and from some of the trees, and I tore down the shed that was standing in the back. But man, I made so much mess with it. There was no way for me to fix it. I mean, that little backhoe was useless for me, uh, because the ground that the house was standing on was so soft that I was constantly getting stuck with it, and it didn't have tracks. It just had wheels, and I was constantly getting stuck with it, man. And I made so much mess around house, and I didn't know how to fix it. So I had to call professionals, and I had to spend all these extra money for them to fix it for me. I was so pissed that I'm spending all these extra money for that. Anyway, they fixed it for me, I don't actually remember the exact numbers that I spent on it, but I mean that also didn't go very well. They also got stuck in the mud with the bobcat, and he had like really expensive bobcat, like $120,000 bobcat, and he got stuck in the mud, and they couldn't get out, and they had to bring over big trucks and crane to get the backhoe out, the bobcat out of the hole, and they did terrible job, and I had to actually finish uh, some of it myself, the leveling, because they didn't. I mean, they probably could do better job, but I don't think they did a good job to me, for me, and I had to do some detailing afterwards, and it also took time. And but anyway, in the end, I got it all finished on certain level of quality, and then I wanted to actually seed the grass. That's another story. I spent about $1,200 on just grass seeds, okay, on the centipede, and I spread it around. Just it was just the front yard. I didn't do anything on the side or in the back. It was just the front yard. I spent $1,200 on grass seed on just the front yard, okay, because I had another company do me an estimate on how much it would cost me to cover it with a sod, and it was like $7,000, and I really didn't have any more money for that. So I decided I'm gonna give it a shot, and I'm gonna seed the grass. So I seeded the grass, and the very next day it was raining, and and because the front yard is sloping towards the house, all that grass seed has been washed away. Man, and I thought, man, I'm gonna keep all those bags, and I'm gonna try to return it to the store, like complain about it that it didn't grow or whatever, and I wanted to get that money back, but I never proceeded with that. So anyway, I was trying to water the front yard anyway for like next couple of weeks, in the morning and in the evening, and I was trying to water it if it's gonna grow, but it never grew. Uh, but luckily enough, the old grass that was uh, torn down and covered up, the old grass started growing a little bit, so at least it was turning a little bit green, because it was only, the whole yard around my house was just brown, just dirt. So after like 2 3 weeks it started turning a little bit green, but it was all just old grass and weed. But I didn't care. I wasn't gonna spend any more money on that grass, so I started just cutting, with my lawnmower, whatever was growing there, and I didn't care about it anymore. So that's the story with the grass. And of course, I needed to do some finishing works on the house too, but my body was telling me like it didn't want to do anything anymore. But I still had to finish it. Like I had to go in the attic, finish all the duct work, and I had to hook up the new AC unit. I had to take down the old unit and put up a new unit and hook up all the wiring, make sure everything is gonna be, working properly, cooling, heating. I mean, I don't have much experience with it. I mean, I've done it once at one of my other houses, but actually, since that time I forgot everything, so I had to relearn all the wiring for the thermostats and all that. But I did hook it up, and then I had a guy. I didn't want to spend too much money on, some company hooking up my my new pipes, new lines, new copper lines going from the attic to the outside unit. Okay, and those companies, they are freaky expensive, and I actually called some companies and they didn't want to do it for me because I didn't have any permits, and so they didn't want to do it for me because I installed everything myself. So this another neighbor, he suggested me a guy, and he was like 65 years old or something like that, but he had really bad arthritis. But he knew what he was doing, but he had like really bad arthritis and he was barely moving, and I had him going up in the attic and down under the house, weld the copper pipes. And man, I felt so bad for, and he wanted to charge me only $200 for it, and I gave him like 300 because I felt so bad for him that he needed to like crawl on his knees under the house and in the attic, and he couldn't move. I mean, I literally thought he's gonna fall through the ceiling or whatever. He literally had to use his hands to move his legs around. I mean, he was so weak he couldn't move, but still he welded the pipes and filled it up with the he evacuated the pipes and filled it up with a little bit of freon, and we got it working eventually, because some of the wiring was not sufficient for the outside unit because it was a heat pump and I only had two wires running to it. So it's kind of working, but the heat pump section is actually not working. It's only cooling, so it needs at least 5 wires for it. So I would need to run new wires from the attic to the outside unit to have the heat pump working. But in the end, eventually we got it cooling, so everything was working. After all this AC work was done, I had to blow insulation in the attic, the blow-in insulation, and it was also getting so hot because it was, in the summer already, and it was so hot up there, and I was the one who was, up there and blowing it, and it's actually not that hard work, but it's just, tight spaces everywhere. You need to crawl and get in there and blow it in there and make sure you don't miss a spot and make sure you put enough insulation in there. And so I did that, and what else? Well, that was pretty much it. I painted the house on the exterior and finished all the details and cleaned it up and took pictures of it and put it up on market in August 2017, right? And since I finished everything and I was so tired, I started trying to recover myself from all that stress and fatigue, and I was under constant stress, and I still am under the stress because I still have the house and I still didn't sell it, and I'm constantly, under pressure and still hoping that the contract that the house is under right now, that is gonna close on April 2nd of this year, 2018. Today is February 16th, and I'm about to close this recording so it doesn't get too long. So today is February 16th, 2018, and I'm flat broke. I don't have any money. My sister is feeding me. She's supporting me. She let me sleep here until I sell the house. And in the meantime, I'm also looking for a job locally, and I'm not very lucky with that. And so I'm pre-recording these videos to upload them later because my sister only have limited data on her internet. And yeah, that's it for now. And I'll talk about more stuff on my next video. So this was a part 5, and talk to you later.